Greetings and welcome to the Change with Your Brain in Mind webinar. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. You can submit a question at any time by using the chat feature on your screen. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded Friday, May 8th, 2020. I would now like to turn the conference over to Gina Bryant. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hello and welcome. My name is Gina Bryant, and I am the webinar facilitator for the best and brightest companies to work for. Before we begin, I have a few announcements. Today's broadcast is eligible for 1 hour of continuing education credit with SHRM and HRCI. In order to receive your credit, please fill out the survey from SurveyMonkey that will be emailed to you later this afternoon. Our broadcast today is being recorded and will be available to view on the Best and Brightest website next week. If you have any questions during this broadcast, please use the chat feature you see in your lower left-hand portion of your screen. We will answer all questions at the end of this webinar. Today's webinar is Change with Your Brain in Mind. Our presenter today is Julie Boddy. Julie is an emotional release therapist, holistic counselor, and brain health coach in private practice in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Julie earned a Master of Arts in Health Promotion from the University of Alabama and holds a Bachelor of Science in Community Development, Health Sciences. She holds certifications in brain health coaching, holistic counseling, emotional release therapy, grief and bereavement counseling, expert mindfulness practitioner, health coaching, and personal training. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm now going to turn the call over to our presenter, Julie. Go ahead, Julie.
Thanks, Gina. I appreciate the introduction. It makes me sound like all I do is sit in a corner and study. I don't. I do lots of other things. Hi, guys. I'm so happy to be here with you on this chilly in Michigan Friday. So a couple things. First off, I want to take a second to thank Tony Sprobaum at Health Plan Advocate. She was the one who connected me to be able to present today. I do some great work with Health Plan Advocate. They provide, they're an independent corporate wellness vendor, and they do an array of personalized services like screenings, nicotine cessation, health coaching, educational classes for organizations all around the country. And I think they just do amazing work. So thank you, Tony. I appreciate your help connecting us. And yeah, so I do work independently, and I also do work for companies and corporations with their professional development, as well as working one-on-one with employees. So a couple of things about me. First of all, I'm really bummed that I don't get to hear you guys laugh while we're in this webinar. I love interaction with my audience, and I love to be able to have us all be teachers to one another. So if you do have some questions, please put them in the chat, or do have some ideas. Like, we all are teachers and have such brilliant ideas, and so I would love for us to be able to share ideas that we have with one another. Something else about me is I'm pretty informal. I always teach with my shoes off, and I always teach standing up and walking around. So that's what I'm doing, just in case you needed a visual. So on that note, we'll get started. Change with your brain in mind. There's a lot we could talk about right now with regards to change, and we're all experiencing it right now. Even if our lives don't look much different, there still is so much change going on around that our brain is constantly trying to figure out. So there are a couple different types of change that our brain goes to when things are happening around us. The first kind of change that I'm going to share with you is called continuous change. So bear with me. Here's a little story for you. So the other day I woke up and I got up, I washed my face, I brushed my teeth, I looked in the mirror, and I was like, oh, yeah, there's one more gray. All right. Well, this pandemic will be over. We'll be able to cover that up pretty soon. So I go throughout my morning, I do my yoga, I drink my coffee, I have some lunch, chat with my husband a little bit, and then I was planning on going for a walk, and the weather was just kind of cold and rainy, and I was like, nah, I guess I'll just work on my puzzle instead. So instead of going for my walk, I decide I'm going to sit and work on my puzzle. And then a little while later, a girlfriend calls and she says, hey, could we have like a little Zoom happy hour this afternoon? And I was like, sure. So meet up with her and another girlfriend. We're having just girlfriend chat, hangout time. And then my husband comes downstairs and he's like, I don't know what you're planning on for dinner, but could we just do some pizza? And I was like, sure. I had sawed some chicken, but sure, we can totally do pizza. So we have some pizza and watch a show, go to bed, wake up the next morning, wash my face, brush my teeth, look in the mirror. I see the gray hair still, but then I start to see on the left side there's a little bit more of a wrinkle. And I'm like, okay, here we go. This is what we're doing. We're recognizing all this aging, right? So all of that story to tell you, all of those little changes, all of those things, me not being able to go for a walk, me seeing the new gray hair, me shifting from an afternoon of maybe doing some work to an hour happy hour with my girlfriends, not making chicken, having some pizza, all of that type of change happens in our lives generally pretty easily without a lot of brain space. Now, we're all a little different, right? Some of us might be a little irritated that we didn't get to go for a walk, or might be a little irritated that we didn't get to make the chicken dish. But all in all, those sort of changes, those sort of things in our lives, we can sort of run with, we can walk with, and we can get through, right? So that would be considered continuous change. So it's always sort of morphing. We're able to sort of bounce around, but we're able to go with it pretty well. So then let's talk about discontinuous change. So discontinuous change, bear with me on this story. A couple Julys ago, I was on a walk like you do in Michigan. We get, those 3.5 nice months, and so we spend our lives outside, right? So we were on a walk with a girlfriend. I'm on this beautiful trail called the White Pine Trail, and gorgeous morning, sun was shining. Up until this point, I had worked a full-time job for lots of years. I was a wellness coordinator at a college. So I had taken the day off, went for a walk with a girlfriend. We're on our way back to where our cars were, and I found myself lying on the ground under a giant tree branch, thinking, oh boy, I think my back is broken. An hour and a half later, I get loaded into the ambulance, spend 4 days in the hospital, realizing I had broke 16 bones on my left side, shattered my scapula, shattered my clavicle, broke ribs, broke bones off my spine, as well as had a punctured lung. That right there changed the course of our lives, mine and my husband's and my daughter's, for about 8 months, while I laid on my couch for 8 months, praying to God my bones would find one another again. It was a big discontinuous change for me because it was sudden and acute, but it was also such a huge change for my husband, because his wife, who used to go to work every day and then come home and make dinner, and we'd go for walks or we'd spend family time, I now was incapacitated. I couldn't use my left side for about 8 months. That kind of change threw all of us in our family into a pretty big circus, right? It turns into this crazy thing where all of a sudden who does this and who does this, and Julie used to do this and she used to do this. Who's going to clean our house? What are we going to do? Who's going to get our groceries? How are we going to cook? What are we going to do? That that tree branch was our family's discontinuous change that threw us into a pretty giant amygdala hijack. Now, I thought that that story was probably going to be the most dramatic story I could ever tell teaching this class. And then guess what? Now we have a pandemic. So that story actually isn't the craziest thing we could think about, right? Who gets hit by a tree branch on a walk? Who has to live through a pandemic, become a teacher, become a chef, become a housekeeper, become a doctor, become a nurse, become all the things we have all had to become during this pandemic, right? All of a sudden, acute, altering our perspective, new change, pandemic, right? So I want you to take a minute for yourself and just think about where for you is continuous change in your life, right? So it might be continuous change with employees. It might be continuous change with family members. It might be continuous change with actually having to figure out what we're doing in Michigan, right? Oh, we have to stay home another few weeks. And then I want you to identify also where is some discontinuous change in your life. This pandemic might be that. A car accident might be that. Changing a job might be that. So just I want you to sort of think for yourself, where is continuous and where is discontinuous? You can write it down or not write it down. Just note. Okay, so now we're going to all do a little activity. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a few moments, and I know nobody's watching you and maybe someone's watching you, but nobody's really knowing what's going on this call. But I want you to take a couple minutes. I want you to change 5 things about your appearance. So whatever that looks like. Usually I do this with a group, right? And I have people do this with one another, but I want you to do it yourself and just sort of think for a minute, okay, if I need to change 5 things about my appearance, don't cut your hair. It's a terrible idea. Don't. Anything but that. So change 5 things. So hopefully you guys have changed a couple things at least. And then I want you to notice, what did you change? What did you do? Just sort of observe. What did you do? Did you turn your sweatshirt around? Did you put your glasses on top of your head? Did you take a ring off? Did you move your watch from one wrist to the other? Did you take your hair out of a ponytail? Did you put a hat on? What did you do? So just observe and notice. So now we're going to add to the activity. Now I want you to change 10 things about your appearance. Still don't cut your hair. Still a terrible idea. But now I want you to change 10 things. Not about your surroundings, but actually about your appearance. I wish I could see your faces and hear you right now. There's probably a lot of groans. Okay, stop. If you're still trying to change a few more things, you can be done. You really don't have to change 10 things. When I teach this in person, I've had individuals actually look at me and sit down and go, I'm not doing that. That is absolutely ridiculous. It just took me 5 minutes to think about changing 5 things. I can't do 10 things. So think about the activity we just did. Think about the 5, or maybe if you're an overachiever, you already did the 10 things, but think about the things that you just changed. Think about those things that you just changed, and what did you do? I suspect most, if not all of you, took something off. I suspect most of us took a lot of things off. See, change to our brain actually feels like loss. So if I'm physically asking you to change something, most of us are going to take off something. We're going to lose something. We're going to lose a ring. We're going to lose our glasses. We're going to lose an earring. Does that make sense? Right? So it feels like a loss to your brain. And then when I asked you to do 10 things, it probably felt too hard or too fast. Like, wait, what? She just had us change 5, which is a lot. And now she wants me to do 10 things? How am I going to do that? Did any of you think that? How on earth am I going to do that? How am I going to be able to think about that and do it right now? Right? And then it would have taken your brain a ton of energy and thought to probably change another 10 things, right? Or we might have had very little clothing on at that point. So why is change hard? Why on earth is change hard, you guys? Change is hard because it feels like a loss to our brain. It feels like we lost something. Every time there's a change, our brain has to recalibrate and readjust because of a loss. And then it can feel too fast. Imagine what we have just been living through in these last 8 weeks, how quickly things escalated, right? All of a sudden, late Thursday night, kids, there's no more school. What? Oh, now everybody has to stay at home. What? Oh, now you need to do this. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of changes very quickly is the speed, and it can be exhausting for our brain. And then you have to recalibrate your brain to think in new ways, as well as have new thoughts and energy for those new thoughts. So when we think about why change is hard for ourselves, for our employees, for our families, for our parents, for our colleagues, we need to think about the words that change actually presents to our brain. Those words are loss, fast, energy output, and thought. That's a lot, right? All of a sudden our brain is like, whoa, we're losing something, it's really fast, and now I have to be smart about it? Sounds terrible, doesn't it? So what is your brain actually seeking when there is change? What is your brain looking for? Another way to say it is, what does your brain need when there is change, right? So we're going to learn today some really crucial things about what our brains need and what our employees and our colleagues and our families' brains need during change. And thank goodness there's an acronym, because our brains are kind of full with lots going on right now, right? So what is your brain seeking when there is any sort of change? Your brain is seeking, I know what comes next. I know what to anticipate, right? I go to the grocery store, I get out of my car, I grab a cart, I get my groceries. Wait a minute. Your brain actually right now doesn't know what comes next when you go to the grocery store. Do I wipe my cart down? Are there going to be wipes there? Is it going to be safe? Do I wear gloves? Do I wear a mask? I have asthma. What do I do? Right? So I know what comes next is really good for our brains. If any of you have children and did the baby whisperer, followed her protocol for routines for babies, she always had to put your baby on this routine of eat, awake, sleep. Eat, awake, sleep. Because the baby always knows what comes next. And we are creatures of routine, and our brains crave routine. Another thing our brain is always seeking is, I know what to expect. I know what the expectations are. I know what the expectations are. I know what to expect from this person. I know what to expect from this situation. My expectations will be met. And especially right now, that's really hard to do. It's really hard to know what to expect. So let's say even during this quarantine time, you're trying to hire people, or you're trying to build up teams, or you're trying to shift teams around, right? Maybe in February you thought, oh, good, we'll have someone hired soon. and it's May and you still don't have someone hired. That's pretty different probably than how you normally get through things, and it makes your brain a little pinchy. Your brain is also seeking to know that it can handle it. I am brave, I can do this, I have the support, I have the ability, I am able to move through this with accuracy and with confidence, right? But then sometimes there's change and you think, oh my gosh, this sure feels over my head. So we're going to talk about this acronym SCARF, but before we do that, we're going to talk about something that's super important. So your brain at all times is always in threat or reward. Okay? So when we hear about fight or flight, I think a lot of us think, oh, fight or flight, we're either going to do one or the other. Sure, that's one idea, but that would go under the threat category. I would even add freeze. So fight, flight, or freeze. That's going to go into the threat category. Okay? Now there's another category, which is the reward category. The reward category is the category that most of us, hopefully even during a pandemic, maybe not during a pandemic, but most of us sort of live in all the time, right? So we're living in a way where it's like we know what to expect. I go home from work and I make some dinner and I sit on my couch and I visit with my kids and I do a little homework or I do some reading. But if we're doing any of those normal things that we would normally do, and all of a sudden we started to smell smoke, what do you think would happen? We'd like step out a bit of that reward space and our brain would start to like go into the threat space, right? It could be like, where's that smoke coming from? If we started to hear the smoke alarm, which some of us hear more often than others, I'm not going to call myself out on this, but some of us make the smoke alarm go off more than others. If we smell smoke and hear the smoke alarm, oh man, even more into that threat space, out of the reward space, right? So we all know this. So we can be in reward and then we can be in threat. Here's a great example is if you're talking to your kids and you call your kid by their full name, right? All of a sudden their eyes get real big and they're like, oh no, what'd I do, right? Or if your parent calls you by your full name, that's sort of that like, okay, I'm listening, I'm here. My brain's paying attention, right? So threat or reward. So what happens though is if there is something going on and our brain is in reward and there's something going on that our brain is having a hard time making sense of and our brain is perceiving as a threat, what happens is our amygdala takes over. So the amygdala in your brain is a structural part of your brain that sits pretty close to the base towards the back, and it is our periscope. It is the little part of our brain, hopefully little, the smaller the better, the little part of our brain that is always on alert. It's always up looking for threat or reward. So it's actually part of the reptilian part of our brain because we're evolutionary creatures. We had to have a nice size amygdala to be able to stay safe, right? Because we didn't always live in homes with doors and locks and windows. We didn't work in buildings that were safe. We were maybe out on the prairie. We were maybe living in caves. We were living in tribes, right? And so we had to have a pretty good size amygdala to be able to perceive threat. So the best way to sort of understand this is that the threat is when the amygdala is queued up and ready to go. It's like, hey, something's going on, pay attention. And the reward is when the amygdala just gets to chill out and relax and still take care of us, but it doesn't have to secrete warning signs and chemicals to get us to pay attention, okay? So I want you to keep that in mind, the threat and reward, right? So we want ourselves to be in reward way more than threat. Threat feels terrible. We're all living in threat right now, actually. This pandemic, like regardless of how you feel about it, what your thoughts are about it, there is like this overall, like our amygdalas are working a little overtime, like, oh, I got to pay attention, okay? Oh, I would love to chat with all of you about this, but I'll just keep talking to you. Okay, so scarf. We are going to talk about scarf. So David Rock is a very wise neuroscientist. He runs the Neuroscience Institute out west. Smart dude, and I love the way that he describes how our amygdala works between change, threat, and reward. So, in order to keep our brain in the reward state and out of threat, it needs some things. It needs these 5 things really specifically. So what happens is your amygdala, this is not going to really reinforce why we're so tired at the end of the day, but your amygdala is working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Your amygdala is scanning up to 7 times a minute looking for these 5 things that we're going to talk about. Up to 7 times a minute. This is true of small children. This is true of elderly. This is true of middle-aged humans. This is true of people who live on different continents. This is like a human truth right here, okay? So your brain, your amygdala, is always scanning for these 5 things. So we're going to talk about these 5 things. The first thing that your brain is always scanning for is status. Status in the way of who am I of relative importance and rank with who I am. So I explain it this way. I am not a physician. I am not trained medically. So if I am walking into a conference for physicians and they're all chatting with one another, but if I walk in, my status would certainly be very different than theirs, right? So they have gone to school much longer than I have, certainly. They have way different education and schooling. They have a different caliber of being able to help people, right? So that my status would be like amateur novice, and their status would be like expert, right? Expert physician. Now, if I walked into the grocery store and I saw the Pioneer Woman, I don't know why that just came to my head, but if I saw the Pioneer Woman, I would also see her as the expert and I would be the novice, even though I'm a pretty good cook, right? But then when my daughter and I cook together, I would be seen as the expert and she would be seen as the novice because she hasn't cooked nearly as much as I have, although she is pretty good at ramen. So we'll give her that. Okay, so status is like this novice, middle, expert sort of thing, and our brain is always looking for it. This is why we hate doing things we're not good at. Do you know someone, or do you have a kid, or maybe it's yourself, where it's like, yeah, I'm going to try that out, and you try it, and you're like, oh, I'm terrible at it. I am never doing that again. Well, if we're terrible at it, what does it say about us, right? It says, oh, we're not the expert, which means, oh, my status is low, and oh, that doesn't feel good to me or my brain. So status is really important. Our brain really, really, really likes it. We don't like being in the novice category. We don't like being at the bottom of the rung, or the bottom rung. Oh boy. So that's status. The next thing our brain is always searching for, and where none of us are getting it right now, is certainty. I think this is why so many people are so pinchy and cranky right now during this quarantine, because we don't have certainty. We don't know how things are going to shake out right now. Certainty is super, super, super important to most people. So I was teaching this to a group of HR professionals at a company that produces office furniture. And the joke was sort of, you know what, just tell Kim she's going to have a blue chair. Whatever happens, I know they're going through a major renovation and their offices are going to be shut down for 6 months. And they're going to have to be in a different workspace for 6 months and have it be dirty and dusty. But you know what, just tell Kim she's going to have a blue chair because that's all she wants. It's kind of a joke, and it's also kind of true. We really like certainty. Our brains like to know what's happening, what's going to happen next. How many of you know this person or are this person? So we go to our cottage every summer, and the whole family joins us. And in January, my sister will call me, and she'll say, okay, what do you want for lunch on Tuesday when we're at the cottage 4th of July weekend? What? Are you kidding me? It's January. I don't remember what I had for breakfast. How many of us are those people or know those people? My sister, bless her heart, she just really wants to know that we're going to have really good lunches when we're at the cottage, and really wants to know that everybody knows what they're going to have, and we're going to have some really good meals. It's sort of the extreme, but our brain is always craving certainty. So status and certainty, our brain is always searching for those two things. If we're starting to realize our status is going down or we're not getting any certainty, that amygdala starts to speak up a little bit and get a little noisy, okay? It's going to start going from reward to threat. So the next thing our brain is always scanning for is autonomy. Can I make choices with regards to what is happening to me right now? How many of you have heard the phrase, I just feel like I'm backed into a corner, or I'm backed up against a wall? That refers to autonomy. So autonomy is really important, especially I think in the workplace when it comes to employees and when it comes to making decisions as teams. We really start to see people have a hard time when their autonomy is taken away. They stop talking in meetings. They stop coming to work. They show up late. They start doing things that are like, this doesn't feel good to me because I can't make decisions. So this is why we say to our children, would you like orange juice in the blue cup or the red cup, right? Would you like blueberry yogurt or strawberry yogurt? We're still able to control the outcome. They're still going to get the juice or they're still going to get the yogurt, but we're giving them a sense of autonomy. Well, it's not really a sense. We're giving them some autonomy in what their choice is, right? So being able to let people have some autonomy is really crucial to reward. If we feel like our back is against the wall, or if we feel like someone's telling us what to do and we don't have any choice in it, we can get a little pinchy. We can get a little crabby about it. And I think we're seeing that all over right now. People feel like they don't have autonomy and their brain is in threat and it's screaming, I need autonomy. The next thing our brain is always searching for is relatedness. Who am I to those around me? I think relatedness is really interesting. This is why people don't move, right? They love their neighborhood so much, and even if their house doesn't work for them, or if their house isn't their favorite, or whatever, if they could downsize or they need to upsize, right? Like, oh, but we love our neighbors so much, we'll never find another neighborhood where we're loved like this. Relatedness, right? This is why people have a really hard time when they get a new boss. Oh man, my old boss knew I had to leave at 3:45 every Tuesday to take my daughter to dance. My new boss isn't going to know that. What's going to happen? Will I be able to still do that? Will this person trust me? Will my new boss make me work till 5? What are we? Relatedness, right? Like, this person cares about me and knows me. And if I feel like I don't have relatedness, I feel like there's a bit of a threat. We all know how this feels, walking into a room of people who all know one another, or into a workspace into a meeting, even into like a networking space where you are the only person that it feels like you don't know anyone, what do? We back up. We turn our head down a little bit. Our eyes stay down. We sort of make ourselves feel invisible because we're feeling like, oh gosh, I have no relatedness with these people. What on earth am I going to do? Your brain is in threat, right? So relatedness is a really big deal. Even when our coworkers quit or change departments. Oh, it's so hard. I always had lunch with her on Tuesdays. What am I going to do now? And then the last thing our brain is always searching for is fairness or justice. This one is huge. So fairness or justice in the way like this. I've worked for this company for 16 years. I have done all the professional development. I have worked hard. I have grown. I have gotten my master's degree. And I had an interview, and I didn't get hired for the position that I'm perfectly qualified for, but someone else did. That sure doesn't feel fair, does it? Fairness or justice in the way right now of there are individuals who are able to get unemployment right now, and there are individuals that aren't, even if it's owed to them. It's not fair. It's not fair that some people are getting paid and some people are not, because the system is bogged down and having a hard time, right? So fairness and justice comes into play quite a bit. We see it really, we see it quite a bit with our kids, but I also think we see it a lot in the workplace. Like, we want to make sure it's fair and equitable and just, right? So all of these 5 things are super important to your brain, and your brain is scanning for them and searching for them all the time. It's also true that every single one of your employees and coworkers' brains are also scanning for all of these 5 things at all times. So if we start going down the road where we're in reward and it's totally fine, but then all of a sudden one of these is triggered, our status, our certainty, our autonomy, our relatedness, our fairness. If one is triggered, we're going to start a little bit of an amygdala hijack. And if something else is triggered, it's going to get a little stronger. So when we talk about this amygdala hijack, actually what's happening is the amygdala is telling our body to release cortisol and adrenaline. We're all probably familiar with both of those hormones, right? But cortisol and adrenaline are the hormones that keep us revved up and keep us safe, right? So cortisol and adrenaline, this is something we could, I think, probably all relate to. We're driving down the street. We think we're going the speed limit. We look into our rearview mirror and we see Michigan's finest behind us. We see those lights and we're like, oh crap. Can you feel that in your body, right? Like, oh, your tummy hurts a little bit and your heart starts beating and like your face gets flushed. That's what that amygdala hijack is, right? That happens pretty quickly. So that cortisol is coursing through our body and the adrenaline. It's trying to keep us awake and safe. It's trying to keep us able to run and jump if we need to be able to escape, to be able to get away, right? It's that threat. So when those are coursing through our body, what happens is the amygdala then is taken over our brain, and it anesthetizes the rest of our brain. Have you ever had it where you had an employee or a friend or yourself go, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I said that? If they were angry or upset or frustrated or mad, or right? Or maybe you've even had it where you said, I can't believe you said that to me, and they look at you and they go, I never said that. It's because that amygdala is putting so much pressure on those adrenals to pump out all of those chemicals that the rest of our brain actually does dim down quite a bit. It's really useful if we're being chased by a bear that the rest of our brain is dimmed down a little bit, because we don't want to have to stop and pee, right? I mean, we're going to get eaten by that bear if we have to stop and go to the bathroom, use that squatty potty. So it's good, right? We want that to happen. But we don't want to live in that space, and we certainly don't want our employees to live in that space because they're not nearly as effective, right? So the cortisol and adrenaline are coursing through our body, which is then keeping our brain and our body in this fight, flight, freeze state, not the reward state. So what we want to do is we want to start to be really good listeners of ourselves, of our families, of our employees, of those who we work with. Because if we want someone's full brain capacity, starting with ours, and we want to be able to work our best and have coworkers who we work our best with and colleagues and employees, we want people to be in much more of a reward state than threat. This is why, like on game shows or cooking shows, people are like fumbling and things are all over and they're like working so hard and all this stuff because they're in threat, and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to hurry up and get this done. We don't want our employees working like that. We don't want to be working like that ourselves, right? We don't always want to feel like someone's standing over our shoulder, judging our every move or doing something so we'll get fired. So what we want is we want people to stay in that threat mode. So we want to get rid of that dopamine, and we want to get rid of that cortisol and that adrenaline and give the brain some dopamine and some oxytocin. Okay? We'll get to that in a minute. So let's keep talking about the SCARF model, because I think this is super important to keep people out of threat. Okay? So for us, right, when we're thinking about our brain, when we're thinking about what's going on right now, and we feel like, oh my gosh, I can feel that anxiety, or I can feel that cortisol, or I can feel that adrenaline start going on, what we really have to do is sort of maybe close your eyes if you can and sort of tune in and be a good listener of yourself and go, okay, what's going on? I just walked into a room with my colleagues. It was pretty normal. I mean, I've done this before. Why is my body reacting this way? Why am I feeling this? Okay, what is it? Is it status? No, I think that's okay. I think that's all right. Certainty. Yeah, I have the meeting agenda. That's fine. Autonomy. Yeah, I feel like I had the choice of whether I could come to this meeting or not. Like, this felt like the more important meeting. So, and I can choose my seat where I sit. I'm able to sit by my friend Kim, and okay, relatedness. Oh, I know why it feels weird. I had to have that really hard conversation with someone the other day, and we're sitting right across from me at the table. Oh, and they didn't really say terrible things to me, but the look on their face makes me feel like they're still pretty upset or hurt about what I had to tell them. Oh yeah, that relatedness. And oh gosh, is it fair that I should be sitting in this meeting with my subordinate that I had to have that conversation with, like, right now? Is it fair that wait, what are they doing here? You see that little path that we just walked down? We were able to go, what is going on? What is actually happening? My status is okay. My certainty is here. I've got the autonomy. Oh, relatedness. Oh, that feels kind of yucky. And the fairness. Oh, should this person even be in this meeting? This might actually not be a great place for them right now, right? So we're starting to go, oh, I know what's going on. And then we could maybe do something about it. Right? We would then have a choice because we're actually realizing what is happening. Oh, this is why I'm a bit hijacked. Okay, so what could I do? I could smile at that person across the table from me. I could set aside that hard conversation and try to be here and be present. And I can also trust the leadership of our company or this corporation that all of the people that are in this meeting right now are here for a reason, and I don't have to worry about whether it's fair that that person's here or not. Do you see how we just got ourselves a lot farther away from threat into that reward space? We actually used some of our autonomy to be able to do that, right? I have the choice to choose my thoughts, and my thoughts are, I trust my superiors to know I'm supposed to be in this meeting and who's not, and I trust myself to smile at this person to know that I'm safe, right? Sorry, my computer said you're not doing anything on me, so I'm going to black out. Is this making sense to you guys? So once we are able to do this with our own brains, it's really, really, really useful to be able to do with our employees, right? So remember that story I told you about just tell Kim she's going to have a blue chair, right? So you can start to recognize and see what is going on with others if you have this model in mind, right? So let's say you have this employee who comes in and they're on a personal improvement plan or performance improvement plan or whatever it is, and they come in and they're sort of salty about their supervisor. I'm sure none of this has never happened to any of you guys, so just this is hypothetical. Just tuck it away in case it ever happens. So they're a little salty. Something happened with their supervisor, and you start hearing them talk, and they're like, she always does this to me. She always springs things on me. I never know what's going to happen during the day. I don't think my coworkers like me, and it's really not fair that she gets to lead our team, and I have more experience than her. Oh, okay. I can hear that. I can have empathy for that. That probably doesn't feel very good to you. But we're going to keep that scarf model in our brain, and we're going to listen to her words. Her words were fair. I don't have the ability to know what's coming, so we don't have that certainty. Status is a little bit in there where she said, I can't believe she's the supervisor and I've worked here longer, right? So we're starting to listen for these words, and we're starting to go, oh, she doesn't feel like her status matters. Her certainty is not there. Her autonomy, like it sounds like her certainty and autonomy are sort of in question, and then fairness too. Oh, and she has that coworker who doesn't like her very well. So we can start to peel away at these things, right? So, okay, well, it sounds like your supervisor is having a hard time maybe communicating with the team about what comes next or what the plan is. So that sounds like something that we could work on with your supervisor. How do you feel about that? Oh, yes, that would be so great. It would just feel so good if I knew what was coming next, and I knew that when I was done with my lunch that I would go back to here, or I would do this thing and I would know what was happening next. Okay, great. Well, what else? What else would be helpful for you? Oh, no, that's it. I just need to know what's coming next. I just need to know. I can figure that thing out with my friend at work. I mean, I'm sure she likes me. She's just busy with her kids these days. Sure? Yeah. Oh, no, I just need to know what's coming next. You see how we can start problem solving some pretty big things by listening to the words people are using and giving them what feels important to them within reason, right? If they walk in and say, you need to fire that person, well, we maybe need to dig and peel that onion back a little bit, right? But it's really important for us to listen, to give people something to help their brain stay in reward, right? We don't want them to be in threat because we don't want their brain to be hijacked, and we also want them to have clarity and good brain health and good brain strength. Well, they can do that if they're not having cortisol and adrenaline. So we want to give them a dopamine bath. So here's a couple ways to get rid of that cortisol and adrenaline, to give someone a dopamine bath so they can be back in reward. Well, the SCARF model is one. All of those 5 things, if we have those, our brain gets to have some dopamine and some oxytocin. So here's a couple other ways to help with that as well. Hearty laughter. We all feel so much better after we laugh really hard. Hearty laughter is one. If you haven't watched The Tiger King, I would recommend. There's questioning laughter, but hearty laughter. Another thing that helps give our brain a dopamine bath really quickly, within about 30 seconds, is the scent of orange oil or the scent of orange. So I tell people all the time, okay, you're going to go into a stressful meeting, take an orange with you. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, when stuff starts to get a little crazy, yeah, you just peel that orange. You're going to have some of those oils on your hands. You're going to eat it, and your body is going to be like, okay, dopamine. It's fascinating, isn't it? You could use lime or any other citrus, but orange scientifically has been proved to go fastest to our olfactory nerves to get that dopamine. So we can't always give people, right, that the scarf for others, but we can really listen well to be able to provide it the best that we can. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go on to the next slide. And you know what? Oh yeah, we'll do this quickly so we can do quick Q&A. If you guys want to do Q&A, let me know. So just a little review. So what happens to your brain when it's scanning for these 5 things and they're not happening? It's that amygdala hijack. Your brain goes to flight, fight, or freeze. The cortisol and adrenaline, they take over, okay? So for what is important for us to remember is reward or threat. We're not in one or the other. We're not kind of in one and kind of in the other. We're in one or the other. We're either swimming in the deep end or we're on the side of the pool. We don't have our legs dangling in one, okay? We're not sort of hot. We're either hot or cold, okay? Threat or reward, period. So what happens in the workplace when it's threat or reward? What behaviors are exhibited? Well, these are the behaviors I see constantly that are exhibited with employees. Poor morale. They're late to work. They take really long lunches. They don't go to meetings. They do go to meetings and they don't talk, right? They really start to distance because what they're doing, and they're not doing it to be a jerk, they're actually just trying to keep themselves safe, right? We all just want to be safe. We all have this baseline safety, right, that we're trying to keep our bodies in and our brains in. And so those behaviors start showing up. And we're like, man, they used to be such a good employee, or they used to be such a good coworker. What's going on? Oh, we don't know if it's in the workplace or at home, right? But what if we start to peel back the onion? What if we start to ask some good questions and say, hey, what's really going on, right? So as leaders, we can really lead our teams in ways to say, like, these are some words we need to listen for our employees, right? These are some things that are really important. This SCARF model can be so helpful so that we can have a team player atmosphere. And then the other question is, if we're leaders, we're also teachers. And so what can we do to help teach others that it's okay, that status matters, and certainty matters, and autonomy matters, and relatedness matters, and fairness and justice do matter, right? What do we do as teachers to teach that behavior, to teach that it's okay, to teach that safety and having your brain, when a change comes or anything shifts around us, when anything is shifting, that it's okay for our brains to not have to be in threat, that we can be okay to be in reward. Because change is happening constantly, right? Change is happening all around us. And so anytime there's a change, your brain is always going through the scarf and going, oh, what's happening? So Gina, do you want to do a little, like, are there any questions? Are there not questions? I don't even know.
There's a few. Do you have a minute?
Okay. I do have a minute. Do you guys have a minute?
Absolutely. We have 5 minutes, actually.
Awesome.
While we are so busy taking care of our families and everyone else, this information is great. What's the one big takeaway you want us to get from your presentation that's going to help us the most?
Ooh. That it's really important to keep your brain out of threat. that as much as we love to take care of our families and those around us, that if we are able to keep our own brains out of threat and in reward, we are going to be phenomenally phenomenally, oh my gosh, words today. Okay. We're going to be better ourselves. We're going to think better. We're going to have better communication. We're going to be able to use our whole brain. So for you to be able to really step into this space where you're like, okay, I don't have autonomy about whether I can leave the house because the governor told me not to, but I do have autonomy about what I do in my house. Okay. I don't have certainty about when my kids are going to go back to school, but I do have certainty that my kids are going to read a book for an hour today. Does that make sense? So really creating that scarf for yourself so that you can provide safety and wisdom and use your whole brain around your family.
Now, do you have something, or can you recommend something that goes into bigger details on the SCARF model?
You know, I would, David Rock has a couple books out there. I cannot right at the moment think of them because I'm at my office and I brought them home. And then at my house, he has a number of books. I would also just look up his information on the Neuroscience Institute.
Okay. And the last question here, being in the HR and taking care of so many employees, how can I stop the chatter in my mind so that I can focus?
Oh man, can we do another one of these next week? I've got another great presentation. That's a great question. Holy cow. So the short answer is that we have about 70,000 thoughts that go through our brain every day. Lucky us. And we have never been told that we get to choose which ones we have. What? Fascinating to learn that we get to actually choose our thoughts. So as parents or as kids, we've always been told like, oh, well, you get to control you. You know, you're in charge of you. You're in control of you. And your actions, actually, we kind of have to reverse that a little bit. You're actually in control of your thoughts. So what does it look like for us to take a moment and take a couple deep breaths before we have a meeting or before we have a hard or a great conversation, right? Take a couple deep breaths and really notice our heart beating. Really notice our butt in our chair. Really notice how the back of our eyelids feel. And get really quiet and connected with ourselves. And then be able to say, okay, I'm going to choose the thoughts that I have right now. I'm going to choose to be present with this person, but I'm also going to choose the thoughts that I have. I would be happy to, there's a great podcast that I would recommend that goes along with that. I know it sounds super simple. It's not. I think it's the true meaning of mindfulness, to be honest with you, to actually choose our thoughts. But I'd be happy to send a podcast to you, Gina, if you wanted to share it with the people that are on the webinar today.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We are at the top of the hour. I want to thank you, Julie, for your presentation. It was wonderful.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I want to remind everyone to fill out the survey that's going to be emailed to you later this afternoon. Again, this will be the only way you'll be able to receive your 1-hour credit for SHRM or HRCI. And just as another reminder that today's webinar was recorded. It will be available next week on the Best and Brightest website for you to look at. You can also register for any of our upcoming webinars there as well. Thank you again, Julie. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Have a wonderful
Thanks for having me. It was so fun.
Thank you. Everyone be safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.